It's the spring of 2015, and as I walk across the lawn on a beautiful sunny day, in fact, a day just like today, I see students sitting in the grass, joyfully reading their accounting textbooks as frisbees fly over their heads. Almost exactly the way Thomas Jefferson drew it up nearly 200 years ago. But as I approach the chapel, I see one of my students, a fourth-year student, in tears waiting for the bus. When I stop and ask her what was the matter, she tells me she's having a hard time keeping up academically. She's trying to do 2 concentrations, a track, a major outside the Commerce School, while also serving as a leader of one of our student organizations. And on top of all that, she's about to graduate, and she still doesn't know what she wants to do with the rest of her life. At that moment, I knew we had to take a fresh look at the student experience at McIntire from beginning to end, because we need to give our students more than just lines on a resume or lines on a transcript. We need to give our students the tools they need to design their life. Now, how many of you have heard of design thinking? Right. So most of you know that design thinking is a great approach for designing products. Think Apple, Steve Jobs, design companies like IDEO and Fjord. But as it turns out, design thinking is also a great approach for designing user experiences. In our case, the user is a student, and the experience is life. And whether you're designing products or experiences, with design thinking, you always start by developing empathy for your user. So we've talked to many, many students over the years, and we've come to realize that undergraduate students have a lot of anxiety about their future. Where does this anxiety come from? What is the root cause? As we think about it, really, especially entering their 4th year, they're going through the big transformation. Transforming from I am a student, which is the identity they've had for virtually their entire life, to I'm not a student. And with that comes a decision explosion. Shifting from making many small decisions, like what classes am I going to take next semester, to what am I going to do with the rest of my life? That causes a lot of undue anxiety. The last thing we need is for a 20-year-old to be thinking about honing in on one singular vision of their future. No, instead, they need to be diverging at this stage through prototyping and testing. In our context, prototyping occurs when students go out and take many different classes across grounds, figuring out what they like and they don't like, doing an internship, doing a global study abroad, shadowing somebody at work, and in each case, figuring out what they like and they don't like about each experience. Practicing self-awareness, adaptability, and learning how to make sense out of what they value. I'd like to tell you a story about a 4th-year student that graduated a few years ago from McIntire School. She was a concentrator in IT and finance. She went to work for McKinsey & Company in the Bay Area of San Francisco. As she was working at McKinsey, she started to realize that she really became interested in the area of diversity. And as she did that, she went to her management team at McKinsey and suggested that they start a practice focused on diversity. When they declined, Tina decided to go out on her own and start her own diversity consulting practice. As it turns out, diversity is a huge issue in Silicon Valley, and her business flourished. And so did Tina's passion for diversity. So Tina then decided she was going to go back to school last year to get her PhD with a focus on diversity so that she could conduct research and teach the next generation about the power of diversity. Now, Tina's story is a great one. It's not uncommon. In fact, research shows that 10 years out of school, less than 20% of people are doing anything that has anything to do with their major. Or in Tina's case, what she concentrated in. So if you think about it, life is more like improv than a scripted play. It's about working your way into your passion. Doing what Tina did, paying attention intentionally to what you value and what you don't value, what energizes you and what de-energizes you, and adapting accordingly, changing your career trajectory based on your understanding of who you are and what you value. Now, at the McIntire School, we like to say, innovation is our tradition. And I'd like to tell you about a few ways that we've been innovating with our undergraduate program over the last couple of years, utilizing design thinking principles to improve our classes, our experiences, and our programs. In the first year, students at UVA, if they're interested in commerce, will take COM 1800, which we've been teaching for the last couple of years as an introduction to business course. This year, we decided to redesign that course to focus as a Foundations of Commerce class with 3 distinct themes, one of which will be innovation and creativity. And a big part of that is going to be giving students the tools they need to design their life, starting as students for their 4 years at UVA, but using these tools for the rest of their life. Tools like personal journals and dashboards in which they keep track of, again, what they value most, when they most feel present and alive, and when they're otherwise distracted and unmotivated. This is very important for them to figure out their way forward in life, again, through their 4 years, but for the rest of their career, or careers, like in Tina's case. Now, when students enter the McIntire School, they do what we call the Integrated Core Experience, or ICE. And the very first class they take in ICE is Strategy and Systems. One of the very first assignments that they do in Strategy and Systems is a process improvement assignment, in which we give them a problem to solve, as big as we can think of, and have them work their way through using design thinking principles through that towards a solution. Last year, I decided to give my students a problem that is near and dear to their heart, the advising process at UVA. And so they went out in teams and studied that process, conducting empathy interviews with many other students to find out what their perspective is on both career advising and academic requirements advising, to figure out ways of improving that process. They brought those recommendations to me, and instead of just putting those recommendations on the shelf, like we usually do, decided to, in this case, actually take those recommendations and put them into practice at McIntire. I'm happy to report that we are successfully implementing those students' recommendations this year to their direct benefit, as well as countless students to follow. Our Global Commerce Immersion, or GCI classes, are yet another example of how we try to take students out of their comfort zone, outside of Charlottesville, to various places all over the world. We take our students to South America, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, India, China, virtually every continent other than Antarctica so far. We'll see how that goes. And in each case, the goal is to try to get students to think of whether or not they'd like to live and work outside of this country in these various places that we take them to around the world. Our digital safaris are very similar to that on a domestic scale. We take students to Silicon Valley, to big digital companies like Google, Facebook, to startups, to try to get them to see, do I want to work on the West Coast in those kinds of positions? We take students to New York City to take a look at finance and marketing at big companies and small companies, to understand whether or not they want to live and work in one of the biggest, most vibrant cities in the United States. Very different from Charlottesville, but yet again, another example of how we give them a chance to prototype and test different visions of their future. Our most current example is our digital innovation class, in which we utilize a methodology recently espoused by Google Ventures called design sprints. In a design sprint, you go from big idea to a tested prototype in 5 days. And in that course, we had approximately 40 fourth-year students working on big problems like the parking problem at UVA. Also, another problem that you'll be happy to know they found a solution for, fake news. They actually came up with a very innovative solution that could address a problem that we're all facing today. So as you can tell, we've been very busy at the McIntire School over the last couple of years, using design thinking principles to redesign our programs, our courses, our student experiences. Because at McIntire, it's much more than just a degree, it's an experience. And it's our job to design the very best experience possible. And a big part of that is giving our students the tools they need to design their life. Thank you.